Alright, my darlings. Well, the time of thinly veiled excuses of eating tons of chocolate is once again upon us. But today I'm actually going to be reviewing something that doesn't really have anything to do with the season, and it's more of a follow-up to what I did last year. Moreover, it's a show that's very similar and has been requested just as much, if not more so, than Watership Down. I'm of course talking about the animated fantasy series classic, Redwall.
I am that is. My sword shall wield for me.
I was rather cautious about reviewing this series because I really don't have as much of a connection with it to shows that I've reviewed in the past. The most distinct memory I have of watching the show was a time when I was really sick as a kid and had a marathon of episodes all day, and I was so ill I genuinely couldn't tell if what I was watching was real or just another fever dream. Then again, around about the same time, I did watch the Super Mario Bros. Movie for the first time, and for years I was convinced that was a fever dream as well. So I'm going to go old school with this one, and instead of doing an overview of the whole show, I'm going to do riffs of the first 5 episodes of the first series. I know that might sound disappointing, but I don't have the time anymore to do full series retrospectives. I have a life now. Well, okay, not much of one, but I do have some other priorities that I have to get to, so we'll only be doing a very quick and old school Headphones UK review of this series. But first, a little history. Redwall is a book series written by the late Brian Jacques, starting in 1986 and spanned 21 books, ending as recently as 2011, with the posthumous release of the final book. Like a lot of fantasy series, the book's releases don't necessarily follow in chronological order within the actual story, and are more just random episodes in the history of the world, of which in this case is a medieval-style world which is inhabited by various sentient animals. Think Lord of the Rings meets Farthing Wood. Although ironically, I think the only way you could make Farthing Wood darker than it actually is if you mixed it with Game of Thrones. Explaining the whole lore of the series would take far too long, even for the whole video, and we're mostly just focusing on the show today, so whatever I glean from the episodes I'm going to watch is the most insight I'll be gaining into this franchise. So, without further ado, let's take a look at the first episode of Redwall, which had its air date in 1999. Funnily enough, the exact same year the Watership Down TV series premiered in, and given that this aired on the competitor channel, Channel 5, it's almost like there was a war between the mice and the rabbits going on at the time. It is worth mentioning though that, like Farthing Wood, Redwall was a mixed national production, as while Brian Jacques was British, since the series was handled by our old friends at Nelvana, the production was Canadian based, and also had a large amount of production done in France as well, similar to how Farthing Wood was a mix of British and German in its production. So this show has had quite the spread and distribution due to all the countries it was involved in, which perhaps explains why it has such a cult following. But let's get into the first episode of the series, Clooney the Scourge, Part 1. Now there's a name I could say while vomiting and you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. First thing I have to say is that the intro is quite good. It is disappointing that all the footage is actually stock footage from the show itself, which is pretty lazy in terms of a cartoon intro, but the music is very good, with a great sense of Renaissance romance to it, and the way that it gets more and more intense as it goes on, it really builds that hype. And the final part where you hear the voice go,
I am that is. My sword shall wield for me.
It just gives you chills of excitement. I can't imagine what kind of epic and fantastical things we're about to see in this series. And the first thing we see is a mouse monk fall over and drop his nuts all over the floor. Ooh, that sounds painful. Said mouse then looks at a tapestry in the room he's in, and then flashes back to a time when he was being given what I can only presume is a rock to eat, before his village is invaded by rats. Anyone else confused? We're already 3 minutes in and I have no idea what's going on. Still, that's better than a David Lynch movie, where you get 3 seconds in and you can't tell what's going on. The flashback continues, where we see the mouse being saved by his big sister, only then to fall through a frozen lake. I've said it before and I'll say it again, out of the frying pan and into the fridge. Much like last night's dinner. After taking on dangers like a cat, a snake, and probably the most frightful of all, voles with unidentified accents.
Head west until summer, missy. Good luck, eh?
The last time I saw one of those, it was trying to create a political upheaval. Get out of there while you still can. They then reach a castle, and while the sister dies, geez, that's got to be a record for a kids show, a death within the first 5 minutes. The young mouse, whose name is Matthias, lives on. Well, if history has taught us anything, he's going to become a priest and teach Babe Ruth how to play baseball. Brother Matthias was a mouse, right? We then see Meth grow up in what we are eventually informed to be Redwall Abbey, as the title implies, and not Nicodemus here says to Matthias,
Matthias? Did you say Matthias? Well, I think we've been expecting you.
a word to the wise here, Matthias. If a priest ever says that to you, run for the hills and don't look back. It's not going to end well. This then brings us to the present, where Matthias believes that he hears the voice of Martin, the mouse warrior in the tapestry, say his name.
Matthias.
Well, he's got a bright future in evangelical churches in America ahead of him, believing that he hears the voice of the Messiah and everything. His carer, Brother Abbott, yes, seriously, that's his name. That's like calling a lord Lordy Lordy. Actually, his name is Mortimer, but they just call him Brother Abbott, which is kinda redundant, but whatever. Anyway, he tells him to stop daydreaming and to get back to work. They've got more important things to do. Like fishing. Well, if playing Animal Crossing has taught me anything, it's that fishing is the best way to get rich without stealing other people's fruit, so go at it. Brother Abbott then tells him again to stop trying to become a fighter.
Now you are 13, be a good son of Redwall, and put away these foolish ideas of being a fighter. Even your hero Martin hid his sword when he joined us.
Your character card says monk, and I'm gonna make it stay that way. I am your DM, and you will obey me!
Although it seems that he'll be needing to change his role rather quickly, as our titular character, Clooney the Scourge, has arrived at Redwall to destroy it. Matthias runs into his party when he's taking his friend Cornflower home in a carriage driven by the Badger Nun. There has to be some kind of civil rights violation going on there. Black and white lives matter, damn it. Matthias recognises him as the same rat who killed his family and torched his village all those years ago. Clooney then uses a rather unique method of storming the gates by pole vaulting his carriage to catapult himself and his men over the walls, and then comes up with one of the best threats I've ever heard in my life.
Get your crew organized or I'll have your skulls for skittles.
I don't know if he means bowling pins or the candy, but either way, I'm going to use that threat more often in my life. Matthias then gives a heroic speech on fighting the rats, but Brother Abbott decides to take the initiative that Tony Blair took near the end of the Iraq War.
We'll fight him!
I will hear no talk of fighting. The council will withdraw and consider what to do.
If we can't fight these rats, then we will try to win their hearts and minds by splattering them all over the wall.
3 of Clooney's men approach pretending to be travellers seeking parley, and Brother Abbott is again stupid for believing them.
I only wish to parley with the good abbot to talk of peace.
I will parley with any who come to our door in peace.
Okay, now he's acting like Neville Chamberlain. Are there any other stupid prime ministers you want to emulate? Naturally, the rats enter, double-cross them, and Clooney's terms of surrender are read out.
Surrender must be total and immediate. 2, all property shall belong to Clooney.
Number 3, the Coen brothers will make more movies so I can get paid. And number 4, nobody will ever mention that I was in Batman and Robin ever again.
Matthias naturally takes none of this and makes a stand, though he doesn't really do anything. Constance the Badger is the one who actually drives them out.
Enough talk! Get out, rats! Leave while you still have your skulls.
Jesus, don't mess with the Badger Nun, she's stronger than Ronda Rousey. The rats are driven out, but Clooney orders his right-hand man to steal the tapestry of Martin the Warrior as revenge.
Only you can climb those walls. There's something I want. A picture of a mouse.
Yeah, you've got a man in your crew who can sneak into the Abbey all by himself, and yet you don't ask him to kill them in their sleep, poison their drinking water, not even give them the old shave in the bed routine. No. Let's steal a wall hanging. This leads us to the second episode, Clooney the Scourge Part 2, in where his rogue, Shadow, climbs the wall of Redwall to get the tapestry. Meanwhile, Matthias says that he has to go and find Methuselah, as he'll know the meaning behind the tapestry. Okay, 1, there are other letters to begin a name with other than the letter M. 2, How is finding Noah's granddad gonna help us? We then cut to Cornflower, who is tasked with making an inventory of the food stores.
You and I count acorns. Saffron, find your brothers and start to weigh the corn. I'll round up some help.
How thrilling. Meanwhile, Matthias then hears Martin's voice again, just as Shadow finishes cutting him out of the tapestry. He then chases him down, but manages to lose the tapestry piece as a result. Well, everyone get the felt tips and sellotape. We got a top quality restoration job to do here. Maybe we get that old woman who restored the painting of Jesus in Spain. Clooney then escapes with the tapestry, but Shadow dies from the fall off of the wall.
Don't leave me, Chief. I've no sea room for bunglers.
Man, even Farthing Wood wasn't this dire. 4 deaths within the first 2 episodes. Whoever made this must be really desensitized to death. Where's Jacques from again? Oh, Liverpool. Okay, now it makes sense. Despite all of this, Brother Abbott still insists on not fighting.
Until we know Clooney's real intentions, we will give shelter to any in need. But I hope there will be no talk of fighting.
How can you be so mellow in this situation? You're making the "this is fine" meme look like an overreaction. All the surrounding villagers congregate to the Abbey for safety, but a Vole family is intercepted by 2 of Clooney's men on the way and take them as hostages, but their eldest son manages to escape. Well, now he's going to get his own spin-off series where he'll slowly hunt down those rats who killed his family, and it will all end very anticlimactically and depressingly. Matthias then talks to Methuselah and tells him that Martin's sword is still hidden within the walls of Redwall, and that with it they could use it to help fight off the rats. Yeah, one teenager who's trained to be a pacifist all his life armed with 1 sword versus an entire mercenary troop of rats armed to the teeth. I think I know how that battle's gonna go. The Vole's son then arrives at the castle and Matthias decides to rescue his parents from the rats, but requires a sword to do so. Well, just search some of the nearby caves and find an old man who will give you one. That's how most fantasy heroes get their swords. Despite this, Matthias then goes out and finds the 2 rats who took the Voles, and after some random monologuing, Matthias manages to knock one out with an old tree clothesline trick. Now that's a trick that can only work in cartoons, because every time I've tried it, it either breaks the branch off, or it swings back and hits me in the nuts. After this, Matthias then randomly meets the equivalent of Lord Flashheart in this universe, Basil Staghair, a rabbit scout and, I guess, cavalier, who sounds like Nigel Thornberry and looks like Eddie Izzard's character from Narnia if he was a rabbit.
Novice, eh? Not a novice when it comes to felling rats, eh, what? A top hole feller, as it were.
Seriously, how many times have I come across a character who sounds like this now? It's becoming an epidemic in my show. This also seems like a good time to talk about the voices. The voice cast is mostly made up of people I've never heard of, so not much to comment on there. But they all do a good job. Disappointingly though, it turns out that in one of the following series, the main villain was played by the one, the only, Tim Curry.
Soon, I will have my revenge.
Why did I not review that series? I could be listening to Tim Curry right now. Regardless, Staghair joins Matthias's party. Have I made enough D&D jokes yet? I don't think I have. And decides to help him in fighting Clooney. Meanwhile, he and his men have begun to storm Redwall, but because of that, the lack of rats to guard the Vole family allows the pair to free them. Yeah, I'm sure having all of Matthias's friends be slaughtered horribly is justified for saving these 3 Voles, right? They return to the previous rat they knocked out to make him talk, but find that he's gone because this random snake ate him.
Come with Asmodeus. I will show you eternity.
How is eating him going to show him eternity exactly? Well, unless you stick your tail in your mouth so that he never ever leaves your body. They then return to Redwall and see it's being laid waste to. Matthias and Staghair manage to get in, and thanks to this phalanx of weasels they suddenly have now. Whatever you do, do not let them on stage during open mic night. This then begins a tug of war between Clooney's men and Constance the awesome badger in trying to prevent Clooney from scaling over the wall, until Matthias cleverly flips the plank and presumably kills Clooney and his men as a result. This show is taking death really lightly. It's a good thing I haven't let the cull counter out for this one. He'd be gorging himself right now. No, as it turns out, he's not dead, and this leads us into the next episode, Treachery, in where Constance realises she can take on all the mice at once and decides to eat them. No, of course not. Clooney seems to have recovered from the fall of presumably 2 feet and decides to go and destroy Redwall Castle. again, but this time he needs to try and get into the castle. Well, the monks seemed surprisingly trusting when they thought you were just wandering travellers. Why don't you pretend to confess your sins, go into the confessional booth and kill them in there? It'll probably be cleaner than what actually happens in them anyway. Of course, Clooney is in no state to attack now, so asks one of his men to find a healer to fix him up.
That vixen Sella knows the old ways. And her good-for-nothing son, Chickenhound.
I'll have them both back here before—
Get out!
Just make sure that the cleric doesn't get his spells mixed up and accidentally cast Sticks to Snakes. That would not be pretty. Back at Redwall, they discover Martin's declaration carved into the wall where the tapestry used to be, and Cornflower starts doing a word jumble with them and reveals a twist.
It's just a game my father taught me. See how many words you can make out of a sentence.
Unmix the letters and the message reads, I, Matthias.
Look, there's more.
What kind of words are these?
Apparently Martin knew how to write in Nordic runes as well. It reveals that Matthias is destined to take on Martin's role as a warrior, and then gives Cornflower an idea on where to look for Martin's tomb. We then cut to, oh my. Well, add that to the list of uncomfortably sexy foxes in animation. The healer works on treating Clooney, and he then orders his men to work on a battering ram to storm the gates of Redwall with. The healers, I think, try to poison him. It's not really clear, but Clooney, I guess, sees their deception and pours his tonic away and pretends to go to sleep. They then steal his battering ram plans, but Clooney knows that they're doing so. I don't know, this whole scene is very confusing. And now that I think about it, it's a scene where a fox treats a rat for his broken leg, who is the same size of her, by doing a sensual dance for him. I'm taking this shit way too much in stride lately. The mice then discover Martin's tomb under the M in the Redwall steps, which is in no way like finding Sir Richard's tomb in The Last Crusade.
Take that an interesting turn then.
Meanwhile, Clooney's plan is revealed to be that the battering ram plans are fake, and it's all a ruse to attack where the defences are lesser and get in easier.
Look, she's selling you out, Chief. She's got the plans.
They're fake.
We're not building a battering ram.
No, but they'll think we are.
Okay, I'll give them credit. That's actually a pretty good plan for a guy whose first plan was go up to the front door and ask to be let in. Fortunately, the ever-awesome Constance figures out that it is a ruse and proposes a counterattack. But of course, Abbott says,
I'm sorry, Constance, to mount an unprovoked attack. I'm afraid I could never sanction that.
Your castle has been under attack by these assholes 3 times now, and there's another one coming up. I don't even think Gandhi would judge you for attacking now. That being said, you probably couldn't truly counter Clooney's real plan, which is to tunnel onto the underside of Redwall and attack that way. Again, that's actually also a pretty good strategy. The mice then venture through Martin's tomb and find his final resting place, which again looks nothing like Sir Richard's tomb. Only this time the rodents are exhuming the tomb instead of the humans. They find Martin's shield and belt, and Matthias is shown to be Martin's successor in defending Redwall.
There can be no doubt, young Matthias.
But without a sword and just a shield to use, it's going to be a pretty one-sided battle. Unless it turns out Matthias is also a successor to Captain America. The group then decide they need to find out how the rats are going to attack, though sadly it might be too late as they've managed to dig their tunnel and are starting to invade. The foxes also rob the mice blind and knock out Methuselah. All in all, it's been a bit of a mixed day for the mice, hasn't it? Thankfully, this Cockney-rhyming mole tells Matthias about the tunnelling and gets the idea to pour hot porridge down the rat's hole to flush them out. Funny how they're too kid-friendly to use boiling oil, even though they've shown like 5 different characters take the plunge in this series already. Methuselah then goes to heal up, but the foxes both meet sticky fates, with the mother being presumably hacked to pieces by Clooney's men.
If I were you, I'd run.
And her son being eaten by the snake, Asmodeus.
Asmodeus.
This really highlights the scaling problems of this series. How is that snake so big compared to that little fox? What has he been eating? Baby elephants mixed with steroids and Weetabix? Just so I don't get a ton of comments on this, I did look ahead and he's not been eaten. He's just wounded and later comes back to be the character that is voiced by Tim Curry called Slagar the Cruel.
We are performers, not slavers, you clown. Drop them!
Just so we're making sure we're on the same page here. This then leads us into the next episode, Sparrows Kingdom. The group get to work on trying to find where Matthias's sword is hidden, and thankfully the ever-awesome Constance shows Matthias a socket in the wall where the shield is meant to fit. The light from the moon then reflects onto a nearby weathercock to show where the sword is hidden. So now we're ripping off Raiders of the Lost Ark as well? What's going to happen next? Is Clooney going to rip Matthias's heart out with his bare hand? Matthias then climbs up the pipe of the building with the weathercock. You know, you probably just could have used a ladder. But before he reaches the top, he's attacked by sparrows, and the pipe he was climbing then fails and comes back down to earth. A squirrel then attempts to do the same, but is also attacked by sparrows, but Matthias manages to shoot one down, and then they capture her. Right, sparrow pie, anybody? As Matthias tries to bandage her wing, she lets slip that the Sparrow King has the sword and gets her to take him to where the sword is.
What did you say? Mighty Sparrow King got him big sword. Much sharp. Make him dead. Quick, fast.
How exactly could a sparrow wield a sword exactly? It'd be like trying to hold a butter knife if you had 20 fingers but none of them could flex. Of course, the sparrow double crosses him and they decide to, oh shit. Well, perhaps this review might be cut short a little bit here. No, of course not. They fake out killing Matthias and take him to their king, who has a little crown on his head and everything. Oh, what an adorable feudal overlord. I've neglected to mention that the sparrows all talk in a really weird dialect, which sounds a lot like the language that the Naboo natives had in Star Wars, only even more annoying.
Call brave Sparrow. You hurty?
Crazy mouse no hurt him, Mom. Take him me free home.
Prisoner! This some court of Sparrow! Me, King Bull Sparrow!
As of course Qui-Gon Jinn once said, the ability to speak does not make you intelligent. The sparrows then try to kill Matthias, but he manages to barter himself another day before they kill him. The king then hears that Asmodeus has the sword since they somehow lost it a long time ago. I told you birds can't wield swords, but how's a snake supposed to wield it? That's going to be even harder. The king orders his followers to go and retrieve it. Meanwhile, Warbeak, the sparrow that Matthias had saved, lets him go to return the favour and tries to escape with Martin's scabbard. The king then returns and wrestles Martin to the ground and into a nearby stream.
Winifred! Gather your otters! It's Matthias!
Wait, the otters can't talk? More to the point, they sound like seals? This just raises so many questions. They retrieve Matthias out of the stream, and now with knowing where Martin's sword is, he decides to venture out and take on Asmodeus. Well, considering that he's eaten a rat whole and bitten a fox on the face, he's probably itching for an after-dinner mouse right now. This then leads us into the last episode that we're looking at today, Clooney's Clowns. The episode then opens up with Methuselah dying? When the hell did that happen? He was right as rain in the last episode. What, did he realise that the crack in his skull should probably kill him now? A circus then makes its way to Redwall, and two of Clooney's men then decide to hitch a ride on their caravan to invade the castle. Well, it's a return to form for Clooney. It's a dumb plan, but it'll probably work. The dumber plans in this show seem to be the more successful ones. Actually, they just steal the chest and run off back to Clooney. Meanwhile, Matthias seems to have forgotten about getting the sword back and is now working on a catapult with stag hair, and then sees the circus setting up outside the abbey. Well, you've got the catapult set up, now you've got some target practice. I should also mention that in researching this series, I found out that the show has various featurettes that were shown alongside the show, in where the author, Brian Jacques, would give some supplementary material such as history lessons, but about real history and the lore of the series, character profiles, and so on. They're actually quite interesting, and I kind of wish Farthing Wood did the same thing when it came out, but I mostly love watching this because Jacques has a lovely Scouse accent.
Grayling a la Redwall. Otters, shrimp and hot root soup. Moles, deeper than ever, turnip and tater and beetroot pie. Do we live to eat or do we eat to live? We can do both and enjoy it.
You can mock Liverpool all you want, but that accent is very fetching. In a really trashy kind of way. Anyway, back to the show itself. Matthias talks to the knife thrower of the circus, and they find out that Clooney's men stole one of her trunks, and insists on moving the circus inside the abbey for safety.
We need to be inside the abbey. Safe-like.
That is not a face you make when you're thinking of safety. It doesn't help that once she does meet the abbot, she starts having a gander at their defence plans. Meanwhile, Clooney is given the trunk that his men stole and gets the idea to disguise them as clowns to get them into the abbey.
Clowns are in circuses. You're going to join the circus!
Clooney, your men are terrifying, hard-as-nails, backstabbing arseholes. They'll be perfect to be clowns! Eventually, the rats invade the castle in their disguise, and the circus show gets underway. The knife thrower, of course, does a blindfold show using Matthias as her target, and you may think that this went fine, but if you look at where this knife is and see where his tail comes to, yeah, he just lost his tail. Or at least he should have, but the animators clearly weren't paying attention. As Matthias is pinned, the rats take the opportunity to take him hostage and open up the gate to start the invasion. So you've got a choice here, Matthias. 1, tear your habit and then fight on naked. Or 2, watch your friends get slaughtered in front of your very eyes. Personally, I take the latter in my opinion. Fortunately, Staghair manages to free Matthias, and the ever-awesome Constance pins the rat. They manage to close the gate before the other rats get in, but the ones who are still inside manage to capture Cornflower and her friend.
Open the gates or they flies to the ground!
Interesting how it's taken 5 episodes before she became a damsel in distress. A pretty good record, but it could have gone on a lot longer. The circus then leaves as they open the gates to let the rats in.
Give them safe passage!
Let them pass. Let them spread the story of the triumph of Clooney the Scourge.
I can't tell if you're a genius or an idiot sometimes, Clooney. You manage to trick a thief into tricking an entire abbey, but you won't kill a couple of potential threats just because you want them to spread your story. What exactly is going on in your head right now? And of course, this lapse in cognitive function gives the circus performers the perfect ruse, and they return to help fight off the rats. And they succeed. The knife thrower leaves her coat as a parting gift, and as a way of saying sorry for getting off on the wrong foot. That might be a bit unnecessary, since that's more their fault rather than yours. As they depart, we then cut to Matthias next to Methuselah as he lays dying. I guess he didn't quite live up to his namesake then, since I doubt this guy's 969 years old.
Trust yourself, Matthias. And follow your dreams.
I love you, Methuselah.
Oh dear. How sad. Oh well, episode's over. Yeah, Methuselah's death is kind of rushed and crammed into the last minute of the episode, which is rather harsh, but with so much to cram into this series, I guess it kind of has to be that way. And so ends the first 5 episodes of Redwall. And of course, brings us to the end of this review. Aww. Yes, I know, but I said from the beginning I don't really have the time to do full series retrospectives anymore. But from what I have seen of this show, I can say it is pretty good. But it's not really my thing. The animation is good, but it doesn't really have anything about it that stands out. It's certainly colourful, which in a way creates a bit too much of a juxtaposition with how dark the show can be sometimes. But it is good animation, just nothing really grabs you. Farthing Wood had those beautiful hand-painted backdrops. Even Silver Brumby had similar painted backdrops, and that show's animation was kind of crappy, but the backdrops really gave it a gorgeous style. With the more cartoony look that Redwall generally has, it doesn't feel like it's as epic as it should be. It just kind of makes it look rather basic and standard for a kids show, which for a story such as this, that really shouldn't be like that. Thematically, the show is great. It has a really great feel of a medieval style story, and the sense of mystery and intrigue and discovering more secrets that Redwall has to offer is really enthralling, and the amazing music really helps with that tone. Unfortunately, this leads to the show's biggest shortcoming. It's a little bit dry. Farthing Wood, while it had a very basic story, it had a very colourful cast of characters with a very wide range of personalities between each one, and it helped give the show a sense of colour and flavour in terms of its story and dialogue, and it made it seem less dull as a result. Redwall doesn't really have that. The characters are a bit flat and generic, and they speak very old-fashioned, which works with the theme, but it does make the show a tad dull, especially for a kid. The villains are the best part, since they're far more charismatic and funny than the main characters, which is typical for a cartoon of the 80s and 90s. And Staghair and Constance are awesome, but they still don't feel much like full characters, more just place settings for action scenes. This isn't really a statement on the show's quality. It is very good, it's just how I feel while I'm watching it, and it's naturally to think something is good but you don't necessarily enjoy it. I can see why this show has gained the following that it has. With a story and lore as rich as this, combined with the cute furry animals, it's only natural that it would gain a cult following, but it's just not for me, and I'm not a big fan of fantasy anyway, and this certainly didn't help sway me. Overall, while I can certainly see why Redwall is such a popular series, and why so many people requested I review it, it's just not really for me. But that doesn't mean the show is bad at all. It is a very good show, it just doesn't really pertain to my particular tastes. But in this world, it's each to their own. But for now, I've had enough of this. I'm going on the other side to have a bath. Bye!